The last couple of weeks, I've been talking about this notion of how Jesus does not always get pegged with two options. That there's always, with Jesus, it seems like a third option, a third way to be in the world. And there may be no clearer example of how Jesus carves out and offers a third option than in Matthew 5. Various places in Matthew 5, but especially in this passage that I'm going to read here, Matthew 5, verses 38 through 42. You have heard that it was said, eye for an eye and tooth for a tooth. But I tell you, do not resist an evil person. If anyone slaps you on the right cheek, turn to them the other cheek also. And if anyone wants to sue you, take your shirt, hand over your coat as well. If anyone forces you to go 1 mile, go with them 2 miles. Give to the one who asks you. Do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. What a crazy teaching here. Jesus is talking about what do we do in response to violence and to bullying. What do we do? And I think the world often gives us two options. Most of us take the first option, and that's what Jesus is responding to here, actually. And the first option is to retaliate. Violence comes, respond with violence. That's one way. The second option, though, is some might say, well, we shouldn't do that. We should just do nothing. Be passive. Let it happen. These are two options, and Jesus comes along in this passage and says, actually, there is a third way, a better way here. So let's dig deep into this text, what's going on, because I don't know if it's as straightforward as you think, as we think, all right? So let's look here, beginning in 39, because we get three different situations, scenarios here that Jesus brings up. Okay, so the first one, he says, if somebody hits you on the right cheek, turn to them the other as well. Okay, so what's going on here? I grew up, I heard this, and I'm like, okay, I'm picturing like somebody walking up to me and just punching me in the face, right? And then turning and the other one. That's not actually what's going on here. I've noticed that Jesus says when someone hits you on the right cheek, okay, right cheek. All right, now most people in the world are right-handed, especially back then. I've said this before, how almost everybody was made to be right-handed. Okay, so if somebody is going to hit me in the right cheek, how are they going to hit me? Yeah, like this, right? This is not a punch. You don't punch somebody in the right cheek with your right hand. This is a slap in the face. This is this kind of hit across the cheek. Which that kind of hit is really not so much about trying to inflict lots of pain, right? What is this kind of slap saying? I have power over you. And so Jesus says, okay, this person comes up and slaps you on the right cheek. What do? Cower? Do you hit back? No. Turn to them the other one. Why? Why would he say turn the other cheek? Why? Because when the first time I'm hit, it's about power and saying, you're below me. But when I turn the other one, now I'm saying, now you got to hit me like we're equals. I'm going to expose you in the power that you have by offering my other one. And now you got to hit me like we're equals. The second scenario, Jesus says, is in a court setting. If somebody sues you, the translation, the NIV I read says, if somebody wants to sue you and take your shirt, this would have been a tunic back then, right? The inner garment. If somebody sues you for your tunic, your shirt, okay? He says, now offer what? Your coat or your cloak as well. What's he doing there? What happens back then if I've given my shirt and my cloak? Well, that leaves that person, what? Unclothed. This person is now naked in front of the court and in front of the person who has charged something against you and sued you. Oh, you want this one? Here's it. No. Take it all. And in antiquity, what happens if somebody is naked in public? It is shameful on them, but it's also shameful for those who see it. Huh. Oh, so you want to take me for my shirt? Have more. And let me expose you for the abuse of power. And then the third scenario, somebody asks you to walk 1 mile, go with them an extra mile. Well, this reference is clear back then because back then Roman soldiers could actually come along and find any citizen. And when they're going somewhere, because they have such a heavy load, they can ask any citizen to carry my pack for 1 mile. And that's actually the word used. It's in Latin. It's a word that's not the common word for measuring distance. This is a reference then to Roman soldiers. Clearly, walk this 1 mile and carry my load. And you can't say no. So what does Jesus say? If that one in power is going to force you to go 1 mile, walk a second. Why? Because if I walk that first mile, the law says you can have them walk 1 mile, but no more. That's the law. And so now, imagine the turn here when the soldier has said, here, carry my bag. And I carry that bag 1 mile. And we get to the mile mark, and he says, okay, that's enough. No, that's fine. I got it. No, that's fine. Let me take my bag. No, I got it. And I just keep on walking that extra mile. And now what's happened? Now that soldier's sitting there begging me, please put down my stuff before I get in trouble. How do you expose the abuse of power? Walk the extra mile. Turn it around on them. I love this passage. I love how subversive Jesus is. So the practice we are focusing on today in our sermon series of practicing our mission, the practice is this. In a world that tells us to be self-reliant, following Jesus means trusting God through generosity and sacrifice. One more time. In a world that tells us to be self-reliant, following Jesus means trusting God through generosity and sacrifice. Okay, so what does turning the other cheek and giving up your cloak and walking an extra mile, what does that have to do with generosity? Well, we have to look, what is common in these scenarios that we've looked at? What's the thread? Well, it is that Jesus calls us to give more, to offer more, to sacrifice more than what was expected. And so the way to end violence and bullying is to expose the aggressor through radical generosity. And he actually tells us this, right? Because what's the last verse in this passage? Give to the one who asks you, and do not turn away from the one who wants to borrow from you. Give. Give. And so, in the face of violence, bullying, and humiliation, be generous. Actually, that's not quite right. That's not quite right. I think what Jesus is saying is, in the face of violence and bullying and humiliation, trust God. Trust God. Then you can be generous. So this teaching that's often referred to as nonviolent resistance, it only makes sense. This crazy teaching about turning the other cheek and so on, it only works if someone has deep trust in God. Right? It's not about relying on ourselves to make things even. It's not about taking things in our own hands. And it's not putting your honor above your love for your neighbor or your enemy. Radical generosity by trusting in God. Now, it's so hard for us to get a grip on this. Really? Is this really what we're called to? Is this really going to work? Well, I understand the doubts, but we have examples throughout history of this. And the most recent one that we can look at that changed the world, right, that took this teaching seriously is the civil rights movement. I mean, this is what Martin Luther King Jr., John Lewis, and so many others, they took this seriously. And they said, in the face of whatever comes, we will trust God. We will turn the other cheek. And look what happened. And so, Martin Luther King Jr. has this quote that sums up what we're talking about here in his own words. It's one of these quotes that is both extremely difficult to hear and absolutely beautiful to listen to. So hear these words. Imagine the context in which he says it. And so, throw us in jail. And as difficult as that is, we will still love you. Bomb our homes and threaten our children, and as difficult as it is, we will still love you. Send your hooded perpetrators and violence into our communities at the midnight hours and drag us out on some wayside road and beat us and leave us half dead, and we will still love you. Be assured that we will wear you down by our capacity to suffer. And one day we will win our freedom, but we will not only win freedom for ourselves. Listen, we will so appeal to your heart and your conscience that we will win you in the process. And our victory will be a double victory. Whew. Well, that's some gospel. Of course, Martin Luther King Jr. here is just expounding on Paul's words himself. Paul says it, I think, echoing Jesus' words in Matthew 5, when Paul says in chapter 12 of Romans, starting in verse 20, he says, if your enemy is hungry, feed him. If he is thirsty, give him something to drink. In doing this, you will heap burning coals on his head. Do not be overcome by evil, but overcome evil with good. How do you respond to someone trying to put you down, trying to shame you? Well, expose their shame with your radical generosity, with your self-sacrificial love. But remember, you can only do that if you trust God. So, it's no accident that this passage in Matthew 5 that we're looking at here, about turning the other cheek, it's no accident, I think, that immediately following it is chapter 6, where Jesus rattles off some other teachings. And listen to just my quick summaries of what happens in chapter 6, what Jesus is talking about. Look there after the whole turn your other cheek, and then he says, love your enemies. But then he goes into, in chapter 6, giving to the needy. Generosity. Giving to the needy. And then he talks about fasting. In fasting, in the minds of those who hear it, these Jews that are going to be hearing it, they're going to hear Isaiah 58, where fasting is an opportunity for you to end oppression, to help those who are suffering through your fasting. Then Jesus goes on, what? Do not store up treasures on earth, but treasures in heaven. And then he says, you cannot serve two masters. You cannot serve both God and money. And then he culminates there in the end of chapter 6 with this long, beautiful passage about do not worry. Do not worry. As I have taken care of the birds of the air and the flowers of the field, so I will take care of you. Trust in me. Lots of talk there about money. Why? Why in this context? Well, I think it's because so often what humans trust in more than God is money. And so that is why generosity is fundamental to discipleship. It is an act of trust. And generosity is not a thing you do. It is a way of approaching the world. It is one's disposition when they deeply trust God to be faithful to God's promises. It is walking around on this earth with open hands. And so, in the months and years to come, we're going to talk about generosity, and we're going to talk about generosity as it pertains to your finances. Don't worry, I'm not letting you off the hook that easily. But generosity is so much more than just about money. Right? I mean, as the saying goes, you've heard it, give your time, your talent, and your treasures. I think it's appropriate. There's some nice alliteration, some nice consonants there to remember it. And how fitting, because it takes trust to be able to do it. But what I want you to notice there in chapter 6, as I go through quickly these teachings about money and giving to the needy and treasures and all that, notice what's tucked right in the middle in chapter 6. The Lord's Prayer. The Lord's Prayer. And what is the Lord's Prayer fundamentally about? If you actually stop and listen and pay attention, what is the Lord's Prayer about? Trusting God. It's about trusting God. Trusting that God's kingdom is coming on earth as it is in heaven. Trusting in the will of God. It's trusting to be able to forgive others who have sinned against us. This is an act of trust, by the way. It's an act of generosity to forgive. It's to give up control of the situation, and it is to give up the need to retaliate. Forgiveness is about generosity. It's about trusting God. Lead us away from temptation and deliver us from evil. Only you, God, can do that. The one that really gets me. Give us this day our bread. No. Our daily bread. You hear that? The prayer is not, God, give me financial security. God, help me with my savings and my retirement. It is a complete trust to say, God, give me today what I need. And tomorrow, I'm going to ask you again. How radical is that? This echo of manna from the desert, where every day God said, tomorrow, I'll give it to you again. Trust me, trust me. And Jesus is saying, pray that. Give us this day our daily bread. Trust God for today. And then tomorrow, do it again. I don't like this practice. I've been preaching for however long now, trying to convince you of trusting God through generosity and sacrifice, and I'll be completely honest, I don't like it. I like being self-reliant. To be quite honest, I prefer it. I like, when hard things come up, figuring out how to take care of myself and my family. This is what I've been raised to do. I like that. I like it because my whole life, and I would venture a guess maybe yours as well, my whole life has been steeped in a narrative of individualism and a misdirected virtue of independence. Right? Growing up, what? We hear things like, be your own person. Stand on your own 2 feet. My favorite, pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Physics of that are fascinating. Pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Look out for number one. And in the words of the great Stevie Nicks, go your own way. I threw that in because I've had music references the last 2 weeks. I felt like I had to do it. So, all right. Go your own way. This is the message that we live in. It's up to you. Take care of yours. I've heard it. I've accepted it. So this practice, I don't like a whole lot. But we got to take seriously this narrative that says it's up to you. You just take care of things yourself. Grit your teeth. Be strong. Take care of what needs to be taken care of. But here's one of the problems, and there are many with the problem with self-reliance, though. Relying on ourselves, what it does, and here I think is a serious problem, is that it leads to a sense of entitlement. Right? We feel entitled. We are an entitled people because we think we earned it. And if we earned it, then it is mine. And mine to keep at all costs. How could I turn the other cheek? Offer my coat? No, these are mine. Because we're entitled. And I'll tell you, from my observation, the most miserable or the meanest people in the world, whether they're living in poverty or worth billions of dollars, the most miserable or the most mean people are entitled people. Why? Because they have to protect everything all the time. There's a better way. And it is to realize that it's all from God. I love Catherine Tanner, who makes this quote, and it's just one line, but it captures what I'm trying to say here. And she says, to be a creature just means to lead a borrowed life. Whew. Or maybe we can just take Paul's words in this one question he asked in 1 Corinthians 4, where he asked the people, what do you have that you did not receive? What would happen if we believed that? Whew. So this month, Black History Month, so I picked up a book to read for Black History Month, and it's a book about missions, because I'm me. But this book is a new book the guy put out that is looking at how the growth of Christianity over the last 100 years has been in the Southern Hemisphere primarily. The center of Christianity right now and in the future is going to be in the continent of Africa. Right? And so he's looking at how did the gospel come, and the narrative, so often if you read things about missions and the history of missions in the world and this whole movement to the center of Christianity in the Southern Hemisphere, the narrative is going to be about the great rise of missionaries from Europe and North America. You're going to hear names like William Carey and Adoniram Judson. But what this book looks at is how actually so much of the growth and so much of the movement in the continent of Africa especially came from African American missionaries. Most of them former slaves. That part of the story has been ignored. And so this book looks at how this development happened, and he looks at different examples. But one that caught my attention, actually, I'm not going to talk about the one that really caught my attention. You should go read about Amanda Berry Smith. Just take my word for it. Go read up on Amanda Berry Smith. Unbelievable. But this morning, I want to talk about Lot Carey. Lot Carey was a man, he was born in the late 18th century. He was born a slave. And his grandmother was a Christian, and he kind of turned away for a while. But he eventually came and found Jesus and became on fire for Jesus and started thinking about what would it look like to be a minister of the gospel in the early 1800s. Well, Lot Carey soon decides, you know what? After preaching around and getting a lot of people respecting him, he said, I actually want to take the gospel to Africa. So, Lot Carey ends up finding a way to buy his own freedom and his children's freedom. He's now a free person. And with that freedom, he decides to go to Africa to be a missionary. But what caught my attention about Lot Carey especially was the night before he and some others got on a boat to head off to Africa, he preached a sermon. And it says that his text for the day, for the sermon, his text was Romans 8:32. He who did not spare his own son, but gave him up for us all, how will he not also, along with him, graciously give us all things? And he preaches the sermon And at the end, he says this: I am about to leave you and expect to see your faces no more. I long to preach to the poor Africans the way of life and salvation. I don't know what made me before, I think I wrote it down on my notes wrong. I don't know what may befall me, whether I may find a grave in the ocean or among savage beasts on the coast of Africa, nor am I anxious what may become. To go, saying, I'll give it all for the sake of the gospel. I don't know what to do, Lott Carey, to be quite honest. Because if anybody should have felt entitled to his own life and to do whatever he wants, it's someone who was born a slave and purchased his own freedom. I get to do what I want. And he said, I'm going to trust God and offer myself up to the gospel. Really what he did is he just took Paul's words very seriously in Romans 12:1, where Paul says, therefore I urge you, brothers and sisters, in view of God's mercy, to offer your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to God. This is your true and proper worship. And so with this practice, trust God through generosity and sacrifice. Okay, yeah, we're going to talk at some point about finances, but it's much more than that. It's about Romans 12:1. It's about the example of Lott Carey. And there's going to be lots of opportunities for us to trust God through generosity and sacrifice. But you already do this. I mean, I'm thinking this coming week, I'm aware that Christian Farms Treehouse. Thank you. I almost said Christian Treehouse Farms. That would have been really right. Christian Farms Treehouse. This week, we're going to have people from Christian Farms Treehouse, which is a place where people with chemical dependency come and get freed from that life. And this Wednesday, they're going to come and be with us to eat Wednesday night meal and to have a class on Wednesday nights. And we did this years ago before COVID, and this Wednesday, we're going to start it up again. And in a couple of weeks, we're going to talk about one of our practices is about welcoming others. And this Wednesday, we get an opportunity to do that. But what I want to point out is that this is possible because so many of you, people like the Chapmans, Ken Gabby, and others, have spent years trusting God and offering their time, and their talents, and their treasure to walk with people. This is what it means to trust God through generosity and sacrifice. To walk with people, to give up your own desires, to love people like that. So we're going to have lots of opportunities to figure out ways to trust God through generosity and sacrifice. But I'm going to give you real quick 2 ways to do it this week. All right? Real quick. The first one is this. I want you one time this week, and we're just going to dabble with generosity this week, all right? So sometime this week, here's what I want you to do. I want you, when you are at the grocery store or at a restaurant or getting your coffee or Sonic drink, whatever it is, I want you to, maybe there's somebody sitting at a different table or behind you in line or next to you or whatever. I want you to just randomly buy whatever it is they're wanting to buy. Just take care of their bill. Person behind you in the drive-thru, just tell them, I got theirs. Person next to you at Sonic, say, I got theirs. Find some time this week just to be generous. But now I'll warn you, this can backfire. Because I've actually heard people do this before, and one guy told a story about how he's like, yeah, I'm gonna do that. And so he's in line, I think it was at Taco Bell. There was this sweet older couple behind him in the car, the two of them, and he told the person, you know what, I got theirs. How much was theirs? I'm going to pay for theirs. And he gets his wallet out, and she said, $124. What in the world? What are they eating? Taco Bell. But he was committed, so he did it. So I'm just warning you, generosity might be tested if you do that. Find some way this week to be generous to somebody like that. But here's also what I want you to do. I want you to spend this week, each day this week, take just a few moments and say the Lord's Prayer. Say the Lord's Prayer each day this week. And I want you, when you say the prayer each day, I want you to stop when you get to the line. Give us this day our daily bread. Just stop there for a minute. Hover on that line. And then go on. Because this prayer, if you pray it, be careful. Because you're going to start trusting God. And when you do, you might find yourself being all kinds of generous. So let's end now praying this prayer together one more time. Join with me. Our Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come, your will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we have also forgiven our debtors. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Yours is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen.